If you haven't been stressed as a parent, then you don't have a child because I'm here to tell you that there are going to be moments in which you are stressed, and it could be external circumstances about your work or other things, or it could be something that your child is doing that perhaps is triggering you. And for parents, it could be anything from it's the 75th time that you've asked them to pick something up, or it could be that they're having a hard time and they're showing you that with their behavior. So it's important to note that when we are under stress, when we are in brainstem, which is that fight, flight, or freeze stress mode, we can actually revert to parenting strategies that we do not want to be doing, but we do anyway. So you might find yourself yelling or shaming your child or blaming your child or, doing punishments that you're not consistent with what you want to be as a parent. And I'm here to tell you that we have all been there. We have all been in that moment where you sort of are helicoptering above yourself as a parent, and you're hearing the words come out of your mouth, and you're like, why am I saying this? Why am I yelling? It's a moment that a lot of parents have where in that hot moment where you're stressed and you're in brainstem and maybe your child is triggering you, you revert to things that aren't consistent with how you want to be as a parent. So I'm first off going to give you permission and let you know that's something that we all do. So why do we do that? There's a concept called conscious parenting. And in the conscious parenting literature, we look to parenting as sometimes we have what's called a default network, which means we tend to parent in the way we were parented. And so if you're not conscious of this is sort of the knee-jerk default mode for parenting. And so if you, for better or worse, if you grew up in a family in which your parents blamed or shamed or yelled, you're going to be more prone to those types of parenting strategies. And if you grew up in a home where you made a mistake and you were criticized for that, when your child makes a mistake, you might be more prone to criticism. And if you grew up in a home in which you made a mistake and your parents wrapped arms around that and said, everyone makes mistakes, and they leaned in with self-compassion, then that's going to be your default network. But the good news is you're not at the mercy of how you were parented. If you have conscious thought about, how was I parented? How do I want to parent? If you can cultivate that pause button when you are stressed, then you're going to be able to make a different choice. We know that you really can't parent well when you're in brainstem, when you're stressed. And I want to share one of my favorite quotes, and it's from R.L. Nost. And R.L. Nost once said, "When little people are overwhelmed by big emotions, it's our job to share our calm, not join their chaos." As parents, we often find ourselves really triggered when our children are showing us that they're having a hard time or when we are stressed. And we have all had that moment where we have a very short fuse and something our child is doing is really making us feel upset, and we can't stop and think about how we want to react. So there's a reason for that. There's a reason we often join the chaos. And it's evolution. You're fighting biology. And let me tell you a little bit about why it's so challenging to stay calm in the chaos. There are mirror neurons in our brains which are evolutionarily pre-programmed to match the emotions of another. So when your child is angry, you're evolutionarily programmed to also be angry. So what can you do? As a parent, you can do what is called co-regulation. So co-regulation is bringing the calm to the chaos because your child also has mirror neurons. And so when you bring calm, they are pre-programmed to also calm. The mirror neuron phenomenon is best explained by if your child has ever fallen down and skinned their knee, sometimes as a parent, you actually feel that pain. When your child comes home and a friend has been really mean to them, you feel it like it's your own. And that is both the gift and curse of being a human and a parent, is that we have deep empathy for others. But neurologically, your neurons are firing in the exact same center of the brain as your child when they are in pain or when they are stressed. So you are fighting evolution, but if you can cultivate that internal pause button before you react, then you're going to have an opportunity to bring calm to the situation so your child can match and they can also bring down whatever hot emotion they're experiencing. They can also enjoy the calm. One of my favorite practices that I use all the time with my girls is when they are in chaos, and whether it is they're acting up or they're withdrawing and I'm literally feeling their pain in my mirror neurons, I do a 1 for me, 1 for you breath. This is the first step for me to do any kind of co-regulation. That gets me out of brainstem, and that gets my daughters out of brainstem. So what that might look like is, let's say my child is acting up and my first reaction is anger. I cultivate a 1 for me, 1 for you breath. So I take a breath for myself. I might even say, this is difficult. And then I have a breath for my daughter. This is difficult for her too. So it's both of us sort of acknowledging that we are in a moment of stress, and that deep breath is a way for both of us to get back into the calm. But it's really helpful that you take your breath first, 1 for me, 1 for my child, 1 zillion for me. No, just kidding. It's really important because you want to bring your calm to the situation so that they become calm as well. So another way that you can also bring calm to the chaos when parenting, or regulate your own emotions and stress when you're feeling stressed out, is to bring self-compassion to your parenting. And I want to make a really important distinction between the concept of self-care and self-compassion. So, there's self-care, which is behaviors such as taking a bubble bath or taking a long walk, or taking a moment for yourself, doing something that gives you joy. Those are all self-care behaviors, and those are fantastic. Please do those. But self-care is something that's sort of done off the job as a parent. It's sort of an activity that you're not doing in the moment. Self-compassion is something you can do in the moment. That's what makes it so powerful. And this is from the work of Kristin Neff, who studies self-compassion. And self-compassion, when you distill it down to its very essence, is treating yourself like you would treat a best friend. So in the moment, if you're having the struggles with parenting and you're in a stressful mode, you can't just be like, excuse me, I'm going to go take a bubble bath, right? You need to have something you can do in that moment. And in that moment, you can take a couple of steps so that you can get back to calm. So the first step would be, like I mentioned before, some mindful self-awareness. I am in a moment of challenge. I am frustrated. I am angry. I am annoyed. Whatever it is, label that feeling. The second step is to think about what Kristin Neff calls the common humanity, which is making it just, this isn't about me. This isn't like an isolating me event. Every parent gets stressed. Every parent gets angry, frustrated, annoyed, right? And then the last step is, what would I advise a best friend to do? And it could be something like, I would advise my best friend to take a little break and come back when they're calm, right? So this is something you can do in the moment. Self-care is important, but here's what I'm going to tell you, the truth about it. If you're sitting in a bubble bath at the end of the day, doing self-care, and at the same time you're beating yourself up for not doing a good job that day as a parent, why did I yell at my kid? I really, messed that up. I'm not doing things right. I really am struggling with my work, and I'm taking it out on my kids, and I'm a terrible parent. That's not self-care. That's beating yourself up during a self-care activity. So you have to marry both self-care behaviors with self-compassion, giving yourself the same grace you would give a friend. If a friend came to you and said, "Oh my gosh, I really blew it. I blew up at my kid and I shamed her and I feel awful." Would you be like, "Yes, you are an awful, awful parent"? Of course not, right? But we often tell ourselves these things. And so mindfulness is really great because it cultivates that pause button in the hot moment, but also when you make a mistake, being gentle with yourself and learning from it. So speaking of best friend parents, you might have a network of parents that you regularly interact with, maybe on text, or you call them, or you engage with them socially, your kids or friends. And I'm here to tell you that there are all different kinds of parents out there. And some parents are more aligned with how you see yourself as a parent and how you wish to parent. And some parents may have totally different opinions about parenting. And that's okay. But what I want you to think about is when you're thinking about self-care and self-compassion, I also want you to think about surrounding yourself with a network of parents who support you, who give you compassion when you make parenting mistakes, and can kind of be thought partners with you on how to engage with your kids in a way that's consistent with your own internal wisdom. Jennifer Gonzalez is an amazing educator who has this brilliant metaphor, and I read it once and it really stuck with me. And it's a metaphor around marigolds. So I'm not a gardener by any means, but what I have learned about gardening is that marigolds are protective plants. It's called companion planting. So marigolds actually protect all the other plants that are around them so that they can thrive. On the other hand, apparently, good gardeners know that you never put a garden near a walnut tree because walnuts actually emit some toxic chemicals that sort of destroy everything around it. So when we think about our parenting network, we want to think about people who are like marigolds in our lives. When they come to us or we're in their presence or we're texting with them, we feel better about ourselves. We feel hopeful. We feel encouraged. When we hang up the phone or come back from meeting them for coffee, we feel energized, supported, and nurtured. And there may be parents who you interact with when you come back from interacting with them, you feel worse about yourself as a parent. You feel judged, embarrassed, ashamed. So if you can think about who are the marigolds in my life, who are the parents that I can go to who get it, who feel me, who understand my struggle, who understand the stress and give me comfort, you're going to be protected. They're going to help you thrive as a parent. Now, I'm here to tell you that not everyone is like just solely a marigold or solely a walnut, and surely we have marigold moments in our own personal lives and walnut moments, but I just want you to think about, how do I feel after I interact with this parent? Do I feel better? And really stack the deck for having marigolds. Cultivate your own parenting marigold garden, if you will. Especially during times of stress, this becomes really, really critical. So I encourage you to think about who in your life you can interact with more, who makes you feel more comforted and supported as a parent. A parenting pod of marigolds. Someone you can connect with on a regular basis, because parenting is tough and you don't have to do it alone. And other parents are going through it too. So it's so, so helpful to find your marigolds. So in order to apply what you've learned about how to help your child when they are stressed, we also need to apply the information about how to help yourself when you are stressed. So this activity is twofold. First is to figure out what is your internal pause button that you can bring to challenging parenting moments. What is one perhaps mindful activity you can do in the moment that makes sense for you as a parent? And you might have to try on a couple for size. It could be the one for me, one for you breath, if that works. It could be a mantra. Oh, my child is giving me a hard time. Nope, my child is having a hard time, right? It's shifting a negative thought into something that's more positive in that moment. Or it could be something you actually need to physically do. Like maybe you need to leave the room, take 3 deep breaths, and return. Think about one thing you can do that's going to be calming for you when your children or child are in chaos. The second piece is think about who in your lives are marigolds. Which parents in your life are people who make you feel supported and nurtured so that you can thrive as a parent? And who do you feel comfortable sharing your vulnerability as a parent? I really botched this up. And they lean in with self-compassion and caring. You might write down a couple of people that, these people actually do make me feel really great after I interact with them. What are some ways I can increase my interaction with those parents? And those two things are really going to help you as a parent manage your own stress. Because when you manage your own stress, you're better able to connect with your child in these challenging moments. And you can co-regulate so that they calm down too. And fun fact, you're actually going to be modeling for them or teaching them by example how they can calm themselves. So it's really a 2-for-1. So I encourage you to take the time to do the reflection activity so you can see what really works for you and your child.